You're listening to the Governors Podcast, which is hosted by school governors for school governors and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governors Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in. Okay, let's get into today's topic.
Okay, the topic I'd like to bring to the table is meeting times and probably duration of meetings as well, because I think the times that we hold our governing board meetings are beginning to have a direct impact on the ability to recruit and retain governors. And I say that because I'm finding a lot of inquiries that I get, or when I do work with the Black Governors Network or anything like that, the question is often, Sharon, I can't continue with the role because the meetings are during the working day and I can't get the time off.
As in, like, starting at what time?
Well, meetings, because when I clerked a trust board, the meeting was at 8 o'clock, and I didn't think about 8 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and I didn't think anything of it because I was an early bird, and because it suited all of the trustees, who were on that governing board. They all worked in education, but they worked at the top of education, so they were either head teachers or assistant head teachers. And so, they didn't have to be in class.
Right, okay.
And those who weren't in the education space were managers or directors in other sectors.
Right.
And so when you're in that kind of position, you can more or less dictate
your diary.
Your diary, it's like, I've got a board meeting over there. So, nobody questions it. But when you look at people who may not hold those positions,
may not hold those positions, or have different commitments.
Yes, absolutely. Then an 8 o'clock meeting, a 9 o'clock meeting, a meeting during the working day is just not possible.
It's not viable.
If you think of, I remember saying to a board when they were insisting actually on holding the meetings during the school day, I said to them, if you had a teacher who came to you and said they were a governor in another school and they needed to attend governing board meetings during the working day, what would your reaction be? Because it would change. You'd have to then think about the impact that that's having on your school.
Yes, and who's going to cover those lessons?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So you have to think about it in the same way. The impact. It's not that, in my opinion, it's not that employers don't want to release their staff to do this volunteering. It's that employers are managing businesses as well.
Yes, exactly.
So if somebody is absent during the working day, that has an impact. And so it's important. I was talking to a chair of governors recently, actually, and they were telling me that the vice chair is going to step up for a while because they can't attend. I think it's the next two LGB meetings.
Right.
And these are like, there's another one this term, so the autumn term, and then the one in the spring term. And I'm thinking, well, if your vice chair is attending those because you can't, then why not look at the meeting? I says, what time are your meetings? And they said 9:30 in the morning. Now, this individual is has a position in a mat.
Okay.
Not any that I'm connected to, but they run a mat, and they are a chair of an LGB in another mat.
Okay.
And I sort of said to them, they're a new chair, so the dates were already set before they came in. The times of the meeting were already set before they came in. So they're trying to accommodate with their diary. But what I said to them was, perhaps you might want to think about, if you can't do it for this academic year because the dates are all set, but certainly have the conversation around the governing board table. Consider changing the times of your meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at me and went, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Because some people think that they can't, that that's the way it is. And so I've just got to make it work.
But it's something you can raise in meetings. You can say, or you can send an email into the clerk and say,
absolutely.
In order for me to commit to this role, are we able to discuss what is the best meeting time for the whole board? Absolutely. And rather just, it doesn't matter if you've been doing it for several years or however long.
Or it's always been on a Thursday, or it's always been on a Tuesday.
You can change, you can shift, especially when I'm thinking of when you're trying to bring new people in now.
Yes.
And thinking of sometimes that is the barrier, the time.
Absolutely. That is
the barrier. So when you're thinking of why you're not filling your vacancies, they probably are aware of when your meetings are and think, I don't have the capacity for that.
Absolutely. And I say one of the things I do as clerk is any potential governor I try and meet with first, before they've met with the chair, before they meet the head teacher, before they've gone down the road of any form of induction or anything, appointment or induction. And I give them the practical information.
Yes.
These are the dates of the meetings.
Yes.
These are the times of the meetings. Are these going to work for you in your situation? Because I do that as clerk. If I'm approached to clerk another school, before I even say yes or no, I say to them, can you send me the list of dates and the times of your meetings that are set? Because it doesn't matter if I can do it in terms of capacity. If half the meetings clash with meetings I've already got, then I'm not going to be able to do it anyway. And it will cause a headache for them to then have to change, 6 or 7 of their meetings for the remainder of the year if they've already been set. So the point of having this conversation is so that governors and governing boards can truly look at the schedule of their meetings.
Yes.
Just because it's always been like that doesn't mean it has to stay like that.
Doesn't mean it still works.
Absolutely, because you could have governors who have changed jobs, and so that has an impact. You could have governors who, like yourself, you've moved cities.
Yeah, so I actually have to travel either the early morning of, just so that I'm not caught up with my train gets into the city an hour before the meeting, but if there's a delay, then I'm going to be late. So I have to literally book my train tickets in advance. So I either travel the night before or early the day of.
But
then it also then wipes out my entire day, because it's not a case of the meeting is only 15 or 20 minutes away where I can do a full working day and then go to the meeting. No, because I'm traveling at the early part of the day, I'm basically, for a 2-hour meeting, I've wiped out my entire day. And so it's knowing that, for me, that's a commitment I knew I was going to have and wanted to keep. So I'm willing to take that hit, or I can take that hit, or I can navigate that. I can be that.
Because you're self-employed.
Well, because I'm self-employed. But that doesn't mean that everyone else can. And it's recognizing that not everyone has that flexibility to be able to do that justifiably. But at the same time, it's knowing that on the other end, I'm therefore someone who's coming into the space self-employed. I'm not coming in from a set career where you work 9 till 5. So then it's that side. So are you creating more barriers for people who have different careers and are bringing different skill sets, which links to previous episodes we've talked about in terms of the skills audit and whether it needs refreshing, because who are you attracting? Because whilst your meeting times may fit someone who has flexible scheduling, at the same time, there may be something else that is stopping that person from applying. It's like, oh, you're really emphasizing that you need someone who is a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but I got availability to attend your meetings, and a lawyer doesn't. So it's looking at all the different variables and how one barrier for one person may not be a barrier for another, but that other person has a barrier that first person doesn't have. So it's being able to look at everything, take a holistic view.
It's to take a holistic view, but also to continue to review. I would say in the summer term, and I mean immediately after the usual, the final half term, so May time, is when I as clerk review or look at dates for my new academic year. I send an email out to all my governors to say, is there anything now in your situation that may impact you attending on a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Tuesday?
That's very helpful. Yes.
You know, because they may have childcare commitments. They may have taken on a course of study that requires them to be in college or university or adult ed on a Tuesday night now. So it's not even just about having meetings during the working day.
It's
all those evenings where, you know, people have commitments for CPD or professional development, and it's not that they don't want to attend, but that particular day. So if all your meetings are on a Tuesday, and somebody's got a class now on a Tuesday, then that wipes them out. And that happened. That happened a few years ago for one of my young governors. I say young because he was in his 20s, but he desperately wanted to stay on the governing board, but all of the meetings were on a Tuesday, and he'd just started a new course. But unfortunately, the dates were set, and that was the best date for the majority of governors.
Of course.
So I had to say to him, look, step down, you know, concentrate on your course. If you happen to find another governing board that accommodates, because you've got a lot of value to bring to the table. But if not, it was a year, I think it was a year's course. If not, when you finish your course, by all means reapply. And the reason, some people may say, well, instead of getting them to step down, why don't you just almost have a blanket apology for that year?
That's going on their record then.
Yes, you can, but that's right. It shows on their record, even though it's a justifiable reason for being absent. But also it means that you can't recruit. Because that, you know, if that vacancy, in this particular case, it was a local authority vacancy, it means that you can't fill that vacancy. So you're spending a whole year without that specialism because you're holding it for somebody.
I hear you.
When the reality is that you can juggle.
Yeah, you know, people, and this literally goes back to our previous episode where we talked about having that waiting list and having people ready.
The main reason I wanted to talk about times of meetings is the linkage to recruitment and retention of governors. But before we go there, let's hear from our sponsors, Governor Hub.
Governor Hub is proud to support the Governor's Podcast. As a leading provider of online governance support, we know that confident and well-equipped governors bring about positive and meaningful change. So when you've been inspired to do your best by really leaning in on the topics that matter, you can rely on us for the tools to help your board work better, the guidance and training to develop your skills, and a secure online body of evidence for when it matters most. Visit thehoot.news to join us and feel part of something bigger.
Okay, so
yeah. So recruitment, I think, as I said earlier, one of the main issues with recruitment is the impact it has on people. And during the pandemic, I can understand why meetings were held at all times of the day.
Of course.
Because the majority of people were at home.
Yes. So
I suppose to achieve a good work-life balance kind of thing, it wasn't unreasonable to say to governors, how's about having a meeting during the day so that you're then leaving your evenings free to spend with family and things, because that's what happened to a number of my meetings. They would start slightly earlier, so if it was usually a 5:30 meeting, they may start at 4:30 or 5 or something. So I appreciate and understand the flexibilities that may have happened during the pandemic.
They were shorter as well. I would
absolutely.
Say not even that they were like actually noticeably shorter, but intentionally shorter. Like people would actually be aware that you're all tapping in. The senior leaders they may be in different rooms across the school buildings for those who may have traveled in, especially if there were some students that were there that day for special cases. But most people were at home or in their own personal spaces. And so the meetings actually started with, okay, let's try and keep this to time. Let's try and keep this for 90 minutes. Let's try and keep this. So it's like, it was intentional. It was set. The tone of the meeting, the staying focused, staying concise, staying on point, staying on the agenda was set at the beginning of meetings, which I feel may have been lost since now that a lot of meetings have gone back to face-to-face. So it was a case of people were more time sensitive or time aware. I don't know if those are phrases.
You just you don't have the kind of social interaction virtually that you have in person. The making of the coffee and does anybody want a biscuit and how was your weekend? The usual kind of chit chat. You don't, no matter how you try to replicate it online, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that.
Same.
But having said that, I think it's important that we recognize that things have changed.
Yes.
I've just produced a stakeholder engagement pre-recorded session for a local authority that I'm working with. And within it, I was talking about the need of governors to recognize the different forms of communication and engagement required for different generations.
Oh, can we just rest on that sentence right there? I feel like I should be writing this down, saying rewind. Okay, put it on a slide so I can copy it down.
because it was when I was doing the research for that, which wasn't in depth, or it was like Google, but it was talking about how different governors come to the space in different ways, and a lot of it is based. I'm a baby boomer. I think I'm a baby boomer.
I actually train on this. I can't remember the exact years. But I think you are a baby boomer.
I think I'm a baby boomer. And when I was looking at with this research that Generation Alphas will see the 22nd century.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 21st century as something like
as if that's it.
As if it's massive. And there are individuals, children alive today who will see the 22nd century.
Yeah, because they will hit that 21 and then whatever number afterwards.
Absolutely.
Because if they are 1 today and they live to be 76 or 78, whatever the math is, 78, because we're in 2022 now.
So 78, 2100.
So they'll be the age of my granddad today, but they would have experienced 2100 or exactly.
Yeah. And so, when we think about all the different generations, we have to think about how those generations communicate. And part of that dovetails into how we conduct our meetings at the very basic level of when those meetings take place.
Yes.
What time they take place, the duration of those meetings, and whether they are in person or virtual.
Yeah.
We have to start, this is me speaking as a governor, as a trustee, we have to start offering the flexibility that employers are doing.
Yeah.
You see job adverts now that will say, remote or in person,
or hybrid,
flexible or hybrid.
And even regardless of which one that is mentioned as the primary one, whether it is location based or whatever, most applications, from what I've seen, the ones that I've read over the last few months, there's a bullet point to say, but it's open for discussion.
Yeah.
Meaning there's a willingness to tailor it to the individual. As long as they get the right candidate, they are willing to find a way that works for them. So even though there may be a generic set statement or what the intention could be, just because they have to pick something, they have to kind of draw those applications in. When they're interviewing or getting shortlisting to the person that they want, there's an openness to find out what those individuals who that individual is and what their commitments could be, and make some concessions or make some changes, or, just to be understanding, to be compassionate, and recognizing that people are more commanding. I don't want to say demanding, because that comes from I feel that comes from a much stronger place than more a case of like a more gentle approach, but it's like they're more commanding of who they are, what they want, and they know they're willing to pour their efforts in, but it has to be able to fit their intention for themselves as an individual. These are benefits now for a job.
Absolutely.
Whether the culture of the organization is one that I want to be in, these are the kind of things. It's not necessarily about the number of annual days leave you'll get. It's not about, being able to do these social activities with your colleagues. It's how does it fit the lifestyle that I'm designing for myself going forward, and the family that I may have or may not have, however that's constituted. These are what people are looking at as the benefits, the culture of the organization. Does it care about me?
And that has to be viewed at a strategic level as well. So as governors, when we're looking at, I've often been around the governing board table and heard, when staff request, compressed hours, or they want to move to a part-time contract and all of that. And we have to, as employers, consider those requests. So we need to also do that at a strategic level.
Yes.
If we truly want to be diverse, diversity isn't just about the protected characteristics.
No, it isn't.
It's about being accommodating to the needs of the school, whilst also embracing the needs of the individuals, both as individuals and as a collective strategic body.
Of course.
Everyone
in that school community, academy community, trust community, and how it's what do they say? It's doing the right things, not just doing things right.
Right.
Doing things right is, okay, let's make all the meetings from 5:30, 6 o'clock, because that's what everyone does. Or that's what everyone works during the day. So we're going to add an extra 2, 3, 4 hours at the end of their day, because then it will be outside of hours. But then you're not really considering the context in which you're working in. And then it's a case of, in terms of doing things right, it's like, okay, all meetings should be 2 hours. Does it need to be? Or the meetings always overrun. They always overrun.
So you may as well say, So instead of saying that the meeting is 2 hours, be honest with yourself and say the meeting's 3.5. If they always overrun, to me that speaks to your chairing and your agenda setting.
It's being transparent. It's being transparent, and also valuing the voices around you. So doing the right things is thinking of the context you work in. We do that when we're considering the school. We think of schools on a national level. We think of students on a national level, performance data on a national level. But when we are talking in those meetings and how the school operates, it's on a contextual basis. What does our school look like?
Yeah.
What does it mean here? Do that for your strategic body as well. What does it mean here? Who do we have currently? Who's going and who's coming in? Who do we want to attract? We talk about manifestation in a wider context in terms of putting out what you want to receive. So if you know that you want to move your governing body in a certain direction, you have to be prepared to shift. You have to be prepared to move or review, as you were saying, to recognize where the gaps are. What are we not good at? What are we putting out there? How are we communicating? Which goes back to what I know from you when you're doing your diversity training in terms of how do we look publicly? Do people even want to become governors at my school? And if they don't, why not? What imagery do I have out there? Like, so you can then bring the right people in, but don't bring the right people in and expect to not change. You can't. We bring our difference to make a difference, and that's irrespective of who's coming into the space. Exactly.
They are going to, again, in the stakeholder engagement slides. I was really into that presentation actually, and I was like quite proud of myself. I talked about stakeholder engagement and having a communication strategy, and understanding that you have to review your communication strategy, because every year you get a new cohort of students in and a cohort of students leave. So the dynamics of the stakeholder group, the dynamics of the parent group, the staff, are coming and going as well.
The energy in the school.
It's a constant change.
Yes, it is.
It's a constant change. So for some reason, we seem to think that our governing boards are static.
Yeah, I was going to say have to be fixed. Yeah. And it's probably one of your most prominent variables kind of thing, in terms of it is always changing because people's terms of office is different. Unlike a year 7 cohort, they all start the school at the same time. But when you've got a governing body, people are coming in, so a new person could come in when 2 other people are 2 years in, another person is 12 years in. So it's constantly shifting, and it's being comfortable with that. And it's recognizing that, okay, if the people shift, if the dynamics are changing there, then that means, do we need to every academic year at the beginning in a first LGB meeting, or even at the end of one, or during the spring term, whatever works for you, we need to have a conversation. I don't think there's enough items on the agenda, and I'm not talking about 50% or 10%, but I don't think I see often an item on the agenda for LGB meetings about the LGB.
Yeah, there's no kind of reflection, review.
No.
There's
don't have a
nothing.
standing item. Is there anything that the governors feel that needs to be discussed, or this is something that's changing? Yes, we see training, which is good. That's becoming, well, for me personally and professionally, I'm experiencing that training is becoming more. And I know it's as schools start to streamline processes and standardize certain things, and when you're going through any technical migrations and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like there needs to be something about the actual running of the governing board.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We do have to review and reflect holistically on everything that we're doing. Okay, so let's get into takeaways.
Okay. So for me, I'm good with the time currently. And especially with
yours are in the evening, aren't they?
Mine are in the evening. And I've only ever experienced meetings in the evening, I will say. I think the thing for me is I'm at a stage now where I'm thinking about my own capacity and what I want to do going forward. Remember in the previous episode, I was talking about I'm about to start a new term of office, and I'm deciding what those next 4 years are going to look like if I do complete the full 4 years, and what I want for myself as a governor, regardless of the school that I'm governing in. Because I can see myself being a governor in a school for several years. Like, I'm not saying the same school, but just in terms of that education space. And if I'm looking at taking on a new board position, it's how that fits into what I currently have going on, what I could have going on. And I know that when I will be looking for my next position or considering my next position, assuming that I keep the current one, it's like, okay, I will be factoring in these things. When are the meeting times? And when are the meetings? Because if you find that something you want to do clashes quite a lot with things you already do, that's a decision you have to make. You have to decide whether, like, using an example, me being a governor but wanting a trustee position, right? So it's like, I have to decide, okay, in the present day, I want to stay with this school, but I also want to level up as an individual. So I want to become a trustee. And then it's a case of, which one am I choosing if there's clashing? Because I can't do both at the same time, because I cannot be in two places at the same time. So it's recognizing that the meeting times can actually impact an individual's progression strategy. Like, in terms of what they do next. It could delay them in terms of their own personal targets, their own professional goals. And so I think it's important for, when you are planning to take on more than one position, don't be afraid to have that conversation with your chair, because you never know if there could be some movement that will allow you to do more than one thing. So I think, me personally, the takeaway that I have is set on my movement forward, and me looking at the environment or the space that I want to enter, and if it's fit for me, fit for where I am now, but also has that room for growth, because it's also being careful that you don't just swap in like for like and you're not actually moving forward, because if there's no room for growth, then you're less likely to stay. And so it's thinking of me, not just thinking of the school environment and whether they can retain me, if that retention's good on the school end, but on my end, I want to know for myself, do I see myself being able to operate in that space for a period of time where I can be of value and of service? So I think it's really looking at that meeting times, because, the higher up you go, as you say, and the earlier those meetings could become.
Well, because my trust board, in the trust that I'm currently in, the meetings are in London, and
there's that location.
They are 4 hours.
Meeting.
The
meeting's 4 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's a big. It's a big trust, so I understand. The need, but they're held centrally in London, and I'll say centrally in London because some trustees live further down south, and others live further up north.
Yeah.
So although Birmingham, where we are, shout out to Birmingham, is more
Manchester.
In terms of you're in Manchester. Where central is usually around Birmingham.
Yeah, West Midlands.
But I understand them being in London because
the majority again.
Yeah, the majority. It's just easy straight through, usually direct routes. But that's once a term. We do hold our training and development days for the board online.
Yeah.
We do have any emergency meetings, committee meetings online.
And so that sounds considerate. Yeah, that sounds considerate.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't a part of the meeting date list at the beginning of the academic year. So it's thrown in. So it's it's knowing that people's diaries are probably already set, especially if you're working with people, a lot of people who have a lot of commitments, or, their diaries are quite rigid and fill up quite quickly. But yeah, so in terms of yourself, what would be your takeaway?
Well, I'm not a wilting flower, so
I don't know what that means.
Oh, sorry, millennials.
just using.
I'm not shying. I'm not backwards in coming forwards. I'm not shy to express my opinion.
Wilting flower. What?
Oh wow, you're so young.
I'll take that.
So it's I don't have a problem with expressing my my needs against my business needs or my employment needs, and making things fit. And equally, if something is no longer working for me,
yes,
I'm happy to raise the question, can we look at this?
Yes.
And it's not a case of, can we change this, otherwise I'm gone. It's, can we look at this and see how this can work? So I would encourage anybody, whether you're new to the space or whether you've been in the space a while, that just have the conversation, get it on the agenda, raise it as AOB.
Yes.
AOB, people often think, if there's no AOB, then that's a good thing, and I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I also don't necessarily agree with at the big, unless you've notified the chair of the AOB before the meeting, then you can't raise anything.
No, because something could come
absolutely
up in the meeting.
Yeah,
you could have a thought.
I don't agree with that either, but I would say, governors, you have a voice.
Yes.
The meeting isn't just between the chair and the head.
Nope.
It is a governing board meeting, and anything that impacts your ability to govern,
to serve,
is a valid reason to discuss. Yeah. So that's me, in a long roundabout way, my takeaway.
Yeah, like mine always are. You're usually short and snappy, so you got a bly today.
A bly?
A bly. Jamaican's saying, isn't it? Don't we say that?
Yeah. But our listeners are.
This is cultural. Listening to our episodes is cultural.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governors Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited, and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governors Podcast. Let's connect.